lately I've been doing episodes about that are a bit more timely, but still deeply connected to races themselves. I'm obsessing over all the races I could possibly, get my hands on right now. And it is Western States Week. And if you're into the elite stuff, there's fantastic content out there. This is not that kind of podcast today. This is really a celebration of a race that, any race that has elites in it is able to be put on because of MidPackers and back of the Packers paying full price for the race. And in some ways, like Western, trying for a decade to get in, it is a race that, from everything I've heard, I've never done it. I've paced at it. I've crewed at it. It's a race. It's worth it. It's a stunning course. It's got history to it. It holds up on a lot of levels. But I think, as with every race, is Western States is a mid-packer and back of the packer race. They all are, because we are making it happen. We're the ones that allow space for the elites to do their cool, amazing stuff. And so today I've got a friend who's been on the podcast a couple times. I've been on the podcast once. He was in the documentary DFL before DNF about Jeremy. He's well-known locally. He puts on his own race. He's trying to highlight the Ochre Mountains. We're always talking about Wasatch Mountains and the Wasatch 100. And Josh is out near the Ochres putting on his annual ouch that maybe he'll come up here in conversation. But he's going for the Grand Slam. He got into the traditional Grand Slam, which is an amazing accomplishment, getting into Western States and being able to do it, especially as a non-elite, non-sponsored runner, to get a place in Western and to go for the Grand Slam. It's a special effort. So, Josh, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And it goes by Landy. I'll call you Landy.
Yeah, that's my trail name that I've adopted over the years.
Yeah, man. So let's just jump right in. What's it feel like to get into Western States, and maybe even more specifically, you're mid-pack runner. You're the everyman of running. Like you get out there, you love these races. You're doing a bunch of them. You've finished Wasatch 6 times. Like you're an ultra runner's ultra runner. Like in terms of and I mean this as a compliment. Well, it's in your name. You're a dirtbag runner. You're just a gritty guy. And now you're about to, tomorrow morning, by the time people listen to this on Thursday, you'll be, at the race. How do you perceive Western States when there's so much sex appeal around it? From your vantage point, what's this race mean?
It's interesting. When I first really started to get into ultra running, I'll admit that the appeal of Western States was a lot higher than it is now.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Because it's over the last decade, and it's taken me nearly a decade to get in, it's grown exponentially. If you look at the number of tickets each year, especially over the last 10 years, it's exponential growth.
Yeah. And
so it's, I generally prefer more kind of low-key grassroots races, but, I have, in preparation for this race, been listening to a few podcasts about it. Uh-huh. And, it's very high energy, and it's just a big trail party for, 100 miles. And, I think I'm getting a little bit more excited about it. That,
good.
There's still a lot of the, local trail community there, and a lot of people that just have a great love for trail running in general.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to hear that, and, to be part of that and contribute to it this upcoming weekend.
Yeah.
And so I am looking forward to it quite a bit more than I was, because this was, a dream early on, but, it's taken me so long to get into this race that the dream has kind of faded a little bit. Yeah. But I'm very excited and happy to be there and to, participate in this race as part of the Grand Slam effort.
Do you know how many total tickets were in the lottery this year? Total tickets, not people. And how many tickets did you have?
Total tickets was, it was over 50,000, I believe.
Gosh, wow.
Yeah. And I had 64 tickets this last year, but then you have to also include a year that they canceled it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they canceled it due to a fire and to COVID one year.
Yeah.
but it's nonetheless, it's been, the tickets don't represent each year because of the cancellations as
I
well.
see. What does
And
64 tickets represent in terms of total number of years you've maintained qualification?
so it doubles every year. So first year you enter, it's one, and then it's, second year it's two, and then it's four, then eight, then 16, then
Okay.
32, and
Okay.
then 64.
Dang.
And then add on the years that they canceled. And
Yeah.
so 64 would be, I guess 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, at least 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. I'll say, as much as I can be lukewarm on Western states, and really that's the average. Like sometimes I'm really like, this is dumb. And sometimes it's like, this is the best. I'm never like, but the average of those is fairly lukewarm. If I got in, I'd be stoked. I mean, I think it's with it still being no, regardless of the origin story, which I'm doing the deep dive in right now. Just spoiler alert: Gordy Ainsley was not the first person to do this course, and when Gordy Ainsley did it, it was 89 miles. But he was also not the first person to do this the course. Regardless of all those things, it's the community has taken it on as the origin of this race, and so regardless of all that sort of stuff, the energy there is special. And one of the things I love about it is because it's only really been this big elite thing. I don't know, is it over the last decade? Like at the aid stations, I remember being at Robinson Flat, waiting on my runner to come through, and I mean it was like old dudes with beer guts, hanging over their their Western States belt buckles, from the '80s. Like, the top of the belt buckle is like worn down because of their guts. Like it still has that element to it that makes it
I
special.
love that.
Yeah. Because that will be me and you one day
Yeah,
at the aid station at Wasatch. We've given up and it's just beer guts over our belt buckles.
absolutely. And it's that gives me hope for the race. That
Yeah.
hey, there's
Yeah.
normal everyday blokes there,
Yes.
supporting the new generation.
Yeah.
And so it's generational from that description there, and I love to hear that because then you
Yeah.
have the originals that are there supporting the new generations, and I absolutely
Yeah.
love that because that's what I hope trail running races turn into, is kind of this generational support.
Yeah. 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 And what's cool about the Grand Slam that you're doing is that, regardless of all of the professionalization of the sport, these races transcend that and go back way before. So you just did Old Dominion as number one in the Grand Slam,
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's 100-ish runners, and there are still horses on it. I mean, I think you're the one who told me that. Was that Old Dominion that still has horses on the course?
That's Vermont.
Oh,
Old
it's Vermont.
Dominion
Okay.
doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. Old Dominion. Tell me about that. I remember reading about it. It's quaint. Maybe is that a good word for it?
I think quaint is perfect. It is. It's a great race. It's they if you want to like step back 20, maybe even 30 years into the ultra running scene,
Yeah.
go to this race. It's wonderful in the sense you go and they still have print out pictures or Polaroid pictures of runners in the past on like posters, and they don't have any digital screens or anything, and it's just it's
That's funny.
really just down to earth, just quaint. Only they cap at 105 runners.
Yeah. That's
There's
incredible.
Yeah, and they're not in it for the money. Because
Yeah.
guess what? We there's a lot of swag you get, and if you're
Yeah.
sub 24, you get a pure silver buckle, and the
Whoa.
race only costs 225. Can you get a
Holy
100-mile
crap.
race that costs that much today?
Not even close. I mean, I think the going rate's high 300s now.
Yeah, exactly my point. So these are people that aren't doing it for
Wow.
profit. They're doing it
Yeah.
just because it's, good old fashioned fun in their eyes. And they keep
Yeah.
it that way. And it's
That's
like
impressive.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
great.
in the face of a commercializing industry that's growing quite a bit. I mean, it's got room for me to, work on making a living in it in my little corner. Like it's growing. I admire. That's what I admire so much about Wasatch, and now it sounds like Old Dominion. I don't know much about Vermont, but there are these like this term gets used negatively a lot, but I think this is a positive. There are these gatekeepers that are preserving an era within
Yeah.
ultra running, and it sounds like Old Dominion's doing it. I mean, from what I observe of Wasatch, as long as the current guard is in control, they're gatekeeping on the bygone era of the pure, maybe what we'll call like a purer era
Yeah.
of running. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. And that's, I guess, one of my concerns with, um, we still have a lot of these classic races, the original race directors, and they're the
Mm,
gatekeepers.
yeah,
But, they're getting older, a lot of
yeah,
these
yeah,
individuals.
yeah.
And we're starting to see, ownership, uh, transfer to different individuals. We're starting
Yeah,
to see bigger companies come into the ultra running scene and start to try to purchase some trail races.
yeah,
And we're seeing a slight culture change in trail running because of that.
yeah,
Um, and I think the most concerning part of it is the mass commercialization
yeah.
of it, where these, the original gatekeepers, as you say, that are
Hmm.
preserving the original, grassroots feel and authenticity of what created these races to begin with are maybe starting to um, decay over time. But
Yeah,
there are some out there holding on strong, and
yeah,
we need more younger generation race directors to be
yeah.
out there, and we'll keep pushing deeper into the wilderness to keep these remote wonderful
Yeah,
races alive that
yeah,
have kind of the grassroots feel and stay true to the origin of what trail running is.
yeah. I'm very much of the mind, and no doubt this is not an original thought, but I'm a champion of it. Is that there's two different sports happening when you go out on Saturday for Western states. There is a sport. There's an elite version of the sport happening, and then there's this grassroots sport happening at the same starting line. So on some levels, that's pretty cool.
That
But
is cool.
those they are very different sports. And yeah, so like as Western states, maintains its difficulty to get into, and that's probably only going to increase with the number of people every year. There's phenomenal races that don't sell out every year, and that's kind of what I'm here for to champion. Is like I'm going to go hang out at Devil's Gulch next month, and there's like going to be like 20 runners running the 100 miler, and there's
I
going to
love
be a
that.
great staff out there, like there to support him. I think of Luke Nelson at Scout Mountain. He seems to be like he's a younger guy preserving like this spirit. The Rocky Mountain Slam seems to have some races in it that are of the mind that you're talking about as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah. And to each their own.
Mm-hmm.
And those that
Yes.
love the big, uh, I guess, very well populated races, and
Yeah.
that's great. No discrimination against them.
Yeah.
It's just not my cup of tea necessarily.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate what you say, that at the start of Western, you do have two different cultures that have, for the most part, embraced each other,
Yeah.
which you don't usually get
Yeah.
in a
Good
lot
point.
of sports.
That's a good
Yeah,
perspective.
and where they're there to support each other,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily, you know, be any, it's more of a collaborative
That's a really
nature
good
and
perspective.
spirit. Yeah.
I think yeah. So what you're getting there is like the thing about ultra trail running. There's still the thread, but even though there's two different, like it's going in two different directions to some degree, that there's still like a thread, like weaving us together of like we get how cool this is, we get how hard this is, and we are still champions of one another, at
Yes.
least on some level, maybe on most levels. There's maybe just a few levels where we're like, hey, don't don't screw over like the grassroots race directors, you big guys, like there's some stuff that we don't like, but by and large, I appreciate the optimism of that.
Yeah, and I think if we can somehow, manage to work together, that's great. So we're still a cohesive culture.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. But we'll see what the future holds, and
Yeah.
We're all out there for different reasons, but for the most part, the trail running community is an eclectic and
Yeah.
fantastic group of
Yes.
human beings that,
Yeah.
no matter if you're elite or not, that
Yeah.
generally people get along quite well.
Yeah. And one more note on that before moving forward a little bit is I have never gotten in a discussion like I love the on trail discussions, the late race when the chemicals are firing, and I'm just like the bonding chemicals are going, and I'm just like loving meeting new people. We've never talked about politics. There's never like somehow this culture is able to keep a lot of the crap out of it that would divide us. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that stuff's not important conversations to be having, but on the trail, it's never the thing. It's never been the thing. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts about like what we're out there doing. When you get off the trail and people on Instagram, they're going to have their opinions and they're going to vote for who they're going to vote for. But on the trail, man, there's a really great unifying thing happening out there.
I completely agree, and I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think part of the issue is that we don't have the energy to hold up these facades anymore.
That's right.
And so what we see are kind of the true, more authentic
Mm,
individuals. And it makes us realize, guess what?
we're the
We're
same.
all pretty good people at heart.
That's right.
And the, trail running and the lack of energy to, support these facades
Oh,
these
so
social
good.
facades that we have,
Yes.
it's gone. And now we're just seeing
Yes.
kind of the more raw individual. And guess what?
Yes.
There's not one trail runner that I've met that I'm just not like, I love this person. This is a
I
wonderful
agree.
human being.
Yes.
And so that's one of the treats about, meeting people on the trail, elite or
Yes.
not, that
Absolutely.
they're all raw, authentic human beings just trying their
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. I remember one faster runner I was talking to was just like at a starting line was just so complimentary of like, hey, like we're my takeaway was like, hey, we're both out here. Like we're
Yeah.
both about to do something. We're both gonna exert ourselves to the same intensity. We're both gonna go beyond ourselves. He's just gonna be faster than me. That's the only
Yeah.
difference. He's gonna
Yeah.
be faster than me. Otherwise, we're gonna be completely rubbed raw to this core. But I
Yeah.
love what you're saying. And maybe it's just operating sometimes lower on Maslow's hierarchy is just what we need in order to get along. Like we're just trying to get some food and water out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we all
Yeah.
need.
Yeah. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think you're right. It kind of, in some ways, in some contexts, it can make us more civil. In other
Yeah,
contexts, not so much.
yeah, yeah. If there's only like one piece of meat, we're probably going to kill each other for it. But so
Yeah.
long as there's extra.
Exactly. All
Um,
context driven.
since I mentioned it earlier, and because and I was wrong, but it's one of my favorite things. So Vermont, which you got into, yes, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
solidified.
Still has horses at the start line.
Yes.
It's still a horse race that humans are running. I just think that's cool. Can you give some just high level of what you know about Vermont? When is Vermont? And tell me what you know about it.
I think it's July 19th or 20th, so it's three
Okay.
weeks after Western.
Okay.
So it'll be my third race of the Grand Slam of the four. All and the first three are all within the first seven, or all within 7 weeks. Um, and yeah, and it's a humid
Is
race.
it?
Woo wee! And at least when I've done it in the past, it's you start in almost like this grassy, swampy area,
Okay.
but it's cool because it's nautical dawn, and then you hear horses in the background,
Hmm.
getting ready to start the race, and there's just a small
Wow.
twilight, and you have this humidity just wafting up, and
Oh.
you're just like, whoa, and you can just feel the energy with it between the people and the horses. And of course,
Huh.
they start a little bit separate, or maybe even
Okay.
just a few minutes ahead. It's not like you're running right with them at the beginning.
Okay.
Granted, you do catch up and yo-yo between horses from time to time
I
throughout
mean,
the
are you on
race.
single track when a horse is coming up behind you?
So most of the race is on like what I would consider old colonial roads. So there's
Okay.
plenty of space.
Got it.
Um, Granted, I do remember one incident. it was like maybe 2:30 in the morning, or maybe it was earlier, maybe like 11 p.m. I'm, just trotting along at my pace at nighttime, and then this horse comes screaming around behind me in pitch black, and
Yeah.
it scared the shit out of me because I was just, by myself in my zone. Then all of a sudden, this, big, massive quadruped comes up behind me, grunting, and
That is
uh,
so crazy.
but it was amazing, and like, this
Yeah.
is cool. This is a
Yeah.
really neat experience, um,
Mm-hmm.
and they, at least the ones that I saw, they have the poo bags to catch the
Yes.
poop, so you're not dodging that,
Yeah.
and the separate aid stations that they have to go to, the mandatory aid stations
Okay.
that the horses have, and it's it, and I guess one of the reasons why they still do the horse race too is because it's a huge horse culture out there,
Okay.
and a lot of the race, I think it goes through like over 40 private properties, horse
No way.
properties.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
so it's if it weren't for the equestrian riders, we would not be able to do this race.
Whoa. Gosh,
Yeah.
that is such a good story.
Yeah. And so they are the ones that are allowing us to run through the woods in their private property to do this.
That's really cool.
And so I freaking love it. And
Yeah.
they're very cordial, the runners, and very nice. And and they're, horse people, they take pride in their hardiness. They
Yes.
absolutely
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
And they, due to, their appreciation for their own, the lifestyle and hardiness,
Hmm.
they see, I think, a similarity in the ultra runners. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we need to support this other hardy group of people like
Yeah.
us
I
and
love it.
continue to do this race.
This is
And it's
a
beautiful.
bizarre question, and then I'll ask you a few questions about Western states. When people are when they're doing this 100-mile horse race, are they dressed like cowboys? Are they dressed like like the Kentucky Derby racers? Like what are they wearing?
So some of them I've seen, they look like, yeah, like jockeys almost.
They do.
and then
Okay.
and then some of them are just, you know cowboy hats and plaid
Yes.
shirts and Levi's.
That's who I want to be. I love
Yeah.
it.
And
Do they have
so
like ultra packs on with water and like nutrition?
no, they
Probably
don't.
not. They probably have saddlebags.
Yeah, and I guess they, the horses get between aid stations, they get to and from probably pretty quick, so they have a lot of time to fuel up in between, and
Yeah.
arguably they don't need as much nutrition as we do,
Yes. Yeah.
the riders. But who
That's
knows,
good.
I've
Good
never
point.
ridden a horse, so
I come from horse people, and I'm terrified of horses. My mom grew up a barrel racer. I'm not. They're huge. I'm not getting on one. Okay. So Western states. Just a few questions here. One is, if I were to put myself in your shoes, thinking I'm about to run it, and I know so much of the iconic places of the race, from Robinson Flat being really interesting to Michigan Bluff to Rucky Chucky, even to Placer High, you know,
mhm.
the little track stadium thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything like as you're like anticipating it that you think, oh my, like when I see that river and I'm going to cross that river, like I know that now, like I am in the lore, like I'm participating in something that feels sacred because of it being the first. Like, is there anything
Yeah.
like goes to your mind, like you think, man, I can't believe I get to be the one with a bib pinned on going across the river or whatever. Is there anything like that for you?
I the river, and I believe it's at Rucky Chucky.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's right.
that seems to be pretty iconic, and I
Mm-hmm.
have thought about that. That's kind of a, you know, I wouldn't want to say like ceremonial, but
Yeah.
it's, you've seen, that's, I think, one of the most photographed areas of the
Yes.
course that I've seen,
Yeah.
and it's like a rite of passage
Yeah.
into the ultra world. That's,
That's right.
yeah, that you get to cross this iconic American river in this iconic
Mm-hmm.
American race,
Yes.
and it would be a shame if you just, didn't dunk yourself and pretend it was some
Totally.
type of ultra running baptism.
I mean, that could not be more well said. That's exactly what you must do. And I hope we get, I don't know who's on your crew. Who is on your crew? Who could baptize you?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'll see if I can get a video of it. But I have
Yeah.
3 people coming down, taking time
Okay.
out of their schedules, and Jared Thorley, Mike Burquest, and Mike Zufelt, some friends of mine. And
Nice. I know Jared Thorley. I don't know the others. That's great that
yeah,
Jared's coming out there. Where's he picking you up at? Or is he
uh,
pacing or just crew?
he is pacing, and I
Okay.
think Forest Hill to Rucky Chucky.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
I'll see if he can grab
Oh,
the
please. He would be the
moment
perfect
of
person
baptism.
to. I don't know him super well. I know him well enough to know that he would probably be like into that.
Yeah.
That'd make for a funny moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Oh, that's so cool.
I'll have my white shirt on too to be, to to represent, the cleansing of the experience.
Dude, that's great. And the finish line experience. You have. I'm glad I remember this. You have one of my favorite pieces of advice for 100 milers is that you don't predict your finish time until mile 80. I love that because I'm always like, okay, when am I going to finish? Is this going to be at 30? Am I do 32 hours by 28? And I was talking with Jeremy. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to finish. And he said, oh, Landy says you don't even pick it. You don't even declare a finish time until mile 80. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to put you on the spot and say you got a goal, but I will say that 30 hours feels like a tight cutoff for back of the pack type person. How are you feeling about timing?
Um, you know, my Achilles heel is heat.
Mm,
And last time I looked, it's going to be, around the 90s, which is for Western, I think on the cooler side.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think I can still I think I can do that. I had a surprisingly good and faster run at Old Dominion than I was expecting.
okay,
And so we'll see what I can pull off. If I'm let me put it this way, since I'm only going to get into this probably once in my life,
yeah.
if I get injured, if I break an ankle along the way, I'm dragging myself to the finish.
I admire it. Yeah,
I'll get it done.
yeah,
And even if that means that I'm not going to be able to do the Grand Slam and do
yeah,
Wasatch or Vermont,
yeah,
this is once in a lifetime opportunities. So
yeah,
I'll do whatever it takes to get done, unless
yeah,
I'm completely physically broken or unconscious.
yeah. Here's what I love about your whole perspective is that it's equal parts like thoughtfully critical about the direction of Western states and appreciative of the scale and of what you're about to do. Like it's both. You know what I mean? It's not like if that were you're not like a spectrum of like, well, I'm on this side where it's got to be pure. It's like, hey, there's these two things that are happening and they're in tension of one another. But regardless, on Saturday when you're going for it, broken legs, whatever, you're going to finish. And it's nice. Also, it sounds like since you've done Vermont, I know you've done Wasatch six times. It it would suck to miss out on them, but at least you've done those. This one,
Yes.
you're going for broke, and I love that.
Yeah. And I at least for me, and I know everyone's different. I find goals to be counterproductive in ultra running.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's
It's
so
taking me a long time to get there, but I'm with you entirely. Goals are only disappointment.
Yeah, and there's too many. I always think of it as like a chessboard. The
Yeah,
more moving pieces you have, the more unpredictable the outcome. And
yeah,
that's what an ultra running race is, especially in a 100 miler, is
yeah,
there's too many variables.
yeah,
You can't really throw a goal when you have 50 unknown variables.
yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I like, yeah, don't choose a goal time until mile 80, or
Mm-hmm.
expected finish time, because you don't know what's going to lead up to that. But by mile
Yeah.
80, you've narrowed down a lot of those
Yes.
unknowns, and then
Yeah.
you have a pretty good idea of how you can roll on into the
Yeah.
finish. So
In my Zion attempt, I had so I took Jeremy's advice, and I also ran with a spot tracker because I get a little anxiety. Like I tell my wife and my kids I'm going to be somewhere, and I'm so far behind. Well, so I invested in a spot tracker. So it's just like I don't know. Just follow the tracker. You'll see I'm getting close to an aid station, and then come over and see me. But then at mile
yeah.
80, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to be DFL at this race. I was right. I was second to last. Like at 80, my accuracy was impeccable of when I would finish. So
Yeah.
I think that's wise. I like that.
I'm glad that worked for you. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, Josh, I'll be paying attention, or Landy, sorry. I'm Josh. You're Joshua and Landy. Landy, I'll be paying attention. I'll be watching for you out there. I'll be looking for your baptism. I'll celebrate with you. Good luck out there. I'm super happy that you got in after all the time trying, and thanks for your perspective.
oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to chat with you on these podcasts, and
Yeah, man.
thanks for having me on.
Yep. See you out there.
See ya.